Okay, so tonight's Torah portion is Tetzaveh. It's from Exodus 27, verse 20. And it says in verse 20, "You shall command the sons of Israel that they are to bring you a clear oil of beaten olives for the light to make up the lamp to burn it continually." So this particular instruction is for the menorah. I'm going to tie this in at the end, because I am going to come back to this Torah portion and cover two things specifically, which will be the menorah, actually three things. The menorah, the lighting of it, and the significance of when it's lit. Frank also alluded to the sacrifice of the lamb in the morning and the evening, and also the burning of the altar of incense. All three coincide. All right? And we're going to share this a little bit because I really like how Frank explains it. I think it's a perfect explanation. You start the day with Jesus, and you end the day with him. And the reality is, if we're serving with him in the heavenly places, just as Paul tells us we are, there's a work to be done that's happening 24 hours. And there's a beautiful picture of that illustrated in Revelation 5 and Revelation 8. So I'm kind of giving you an overview of what we're going to cover tonight and how they're all going to tie in together. So what I wanted to do first for tonight is, hang on. How many of you use the term house rules? Okay. If you were to explain that, how would you define it? So we have house rules. What does that mean?
Whatever she wants.
Strike that from the record. Or, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're done for tonight. All right. Let's try that again. Let's define house rules. What would be an example? And it could be anything. And it doesn't have to be biblical, guys. It could be just think. When we talk about house rules.
Don't walk around in your stocking feet.
Right. So that's a rule you had in your house? Yeah. All right. So what are some other rules that you had?
Wash the dishes before you go to bed.
Wash the dishes that are in the sink, right? Yeah, that's one of ours. Yeah. Okay. So house rules, and everyone has house rules. Every family has specific, unique qualities to make things work in their household. Okay? Now, a lot of those things may be similar from family to family, because typically, like washing this dishes that are in the sink, that's one of my wife's big pet peeves, and we try to keep to that one, which I understand. I mean, it's just rinse it and put it in the dishwasher. But I kind of like Tim Allen's reality of, why do we have a dishwasher? If we need to wash the dishes first, just put them in the dishwasher. And I heard that and I thought, that's a really good idea. Why don't we just do that? Why do we have to wash dishes if we got a dishwasher? All right. So generally speaking, there are expectations that are set, again, within a family, within a company, within a congregation. That's behavior that is expected. Right? These are things that are, if you're going to be part of this group, you're going to be part of this business organization, you're going to be part of a congregation, there are certain things that are in place so that everything runs smoothly, okay? It tells people how to do things. So, for example, there are many individuals in this congregation who do things behind the scenes. They make the congregation work, right? We know some of the individuals that do the things in the congregation, that do the same work week in and week out to maintain the congregation. And there are certain things that they want to have done in a certain way. So when they pass that responsibility onto somebody else, our job is to receive that instruction from that individual so that we can carry that forward. Now, we might change some things here and there to suit, maybe there are things we adjust, but for the most part, we honor the person that's given us that instruction and we follow suit and do the same thing. All right? And then that's something that is really important. All right? Our household has some rules, and I'll kind of share a few with you. Is the PowerPoint working, or is it still trying to come up?
I'm still working on it.
Okay, all right, we're good. We'll get there. So We have a nickname. I forgot who in our family called us this, but we have a nickname that we've kept, and we're called the Three Musketeers. So on our text feed, the three of us have this on our texts, so everybody knows we're the Three Musketeers. So a few things that we do in our household. One of the things we do is we celebrate each other's accomplishments. We usually go out to eat. We don't need an excuse to go out to eat, but typically if there's something special that happened, a minor milestone or big milestone, we'll go out and celebrate and do that with each other. We have a 2-story home. We expect everybody to take off their shoes if they're going upstairs, because upstairs are rugs. If you're going to wear your shoes, you got to put something on your feet to go up there because we don't want the stuff tracking upstairs. All right? Not everybody does that, but we do that. You might relate to this one. If you're the last one to finish something in the refrigerator or a particular household item, put it on the shopping list. We use Google Keep, so everybody has access to the same shopping list on our Google. So as soon as something runs out, everyone's got the same shopping list, we put it on there. My wife is real particular about this, and I think it's a really good one because we've got our schedules. We're all over the place. So we have a family calendar. If you have an appointment or there's something that you specifically are going to do and you need to let the family know, put it on the calendar. I don't assume your schedule. You don't assume my schedule. We're all trying to make this work. Someone's got to cook dinner. Someone's got to make sure the house is maintained. Someone has to take care of the dog because she can't take care of herself. All right? She relies on us, so that has to run smoothly so that everything works well in the household, right? When there's some discord in a situation, whether it's external or internal, we have a family huddle. We all meet up, we kind of hash things out a bit, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we go out. So all of those things are important for us as a family unit because everybody has to be on the same page and there needs to be some harmony in the household so things work smoothly. So that if, for whatever reason, something gets left, maybe somebody forgets, somebody else picks up the slack and we're good to go. That happens here in the congregation. Steve just brought that up. There are members of the congregation that have left, and they're going to be serving in Israel, and we have plenty of people here in the congregation who can step up and serve because they've committed themselves to do that and have made themselves available, and therefore, there's a smooth transition. Worship continued smoothly. Hopefully tonight the message will go smoothly. Sunday worship will resume. Their prayer meetings will resume. There's expectations. We have house rules here. And the reason why things continue to run smoothly for the most part, we have our hiccups, is because everyone who commits to them follows them. So we shed ourselves and what we think, and we press into what the congregation needs. Okay? So God also has his house rules. And there's a few things that he's going to make sure that he's clearly identifying for us to understand and make sure that those expectations are set so that it helps to reduce conflict. It creates boundaries to know where we're allowed to do things and not allowed to do things. All right? And it also reflects the culture. So when people see you, okay, as a body, they think, oh, they're part of fellowship because I see how much they love each other. I see how they interact. Now it makes sense. That's the culture of the congregation because they've made Jesus Lord, and just as he loves, they also love. All right. Their support for Israel because they follow the reality and the mission that Jesus has given us to be a support to Israel, to go and encourage them. They know our love. It's evident. We've been there year after year to support them, to speak encouragement to them, to go to them when nobody else would go to them. Just as Steve shared. People are coming back this way, we're going in. Right? We're pressing in. Same thing here in the community. We've maintained a culture that's open to people to come in, to worship with us, to sit with us, to learn the scriptures, to understand the message of the kingdom. And sometimes people will get out of line a little bit, and we're there to correct them quietly and the way the scriptures tell us to so that they can get back in line and understand that there is an order and a way that Jesus wants us to present us to the Father. And in order to do that, we have to follow the way that he set us to do that and not try to go off and do our own things. All right? It makes everything run smoothly because God likes things when they run smoothly. I mean, he's the creator and the sustainer of all creation, and he's given that power and authority to Jesus, and he's done the same thing, and he's taken care of it just as the scripture says, because the Father said to the Son, just as he revealed to David, he said, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make all of your enemies under your footstool, right? He's given them that authority to do that. Now, to a rebellious spirit, when God sets his rules, that's a very uncomfortable thing for somebody who's rebellious. They don't like God's rules. They'll voice it, right? They'll voice it in their displeasure. It's a very obvious thing that they'll say, right? You might see them say to you, well, why are you doing it that way? That's not a smart way to do it. This is the new way to do it. Why are you maintaining the same way you're doing? I just don't understand. I don't get it. You guys are just completely different. You're backwards. That's not the way that I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this way, right? That's not how things should be done. Where did that originate from? Where do those thoughts originate from? The deceiver himself who planted that in us to make us think about things that God said, I didn't ask you to do that. You shouldn't be listening to him. Go and eat from the tree of life. Stop eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Focus on me. As the stories say, it's the tale as old as time. We're also partakers in that. We choose to do it. We don't necessarily always need help of the evil one to do it. We can make our own decisions, and we'll mess things up too, because we're selfish by nature in this fallen nature. But a spirit that's humbled in God's presence, that person has peace, right? There could be a lot of waves roaring outside of the ship, but the person who's humbled themselves and has yielded his personality before the Lord and said, not my will, your will, just as Jesus said, that person's at peace. And no matter what happens around them, or the congregation that commits and says that, no matter what happens around them, is at peace. And they can rest on the boat just like Jesus rested on the boat while it was tossing and turning. Because remember, what was Jesus' command to the disciples when they got on that ship? We're going across. He was confident they were going to make it, and that's why he fell asleep. Didn't matter the turmoil that happened around. They were going to get to the other side. I have a feeling he was probably trying to teach them that lesson. Just relax in my presence. I've got this. Doesn't mean it's not going to be worrisome or we're going to be concerned or it's something we need to think about, like how are we going to get through? He expects that part of it, but he also expects us to stand firm and just wait on him. Paul says that, right? In all things, no matter what, stand. So let's go to, before I do that, a little brevity with this. I saw something on social media this morning, and it ties into this. I want to see if you all caught into this. So part of the reason why I wanted Frank to hold off on this is because this Torah portion and the half-Torah portion actually line up with the story, or it leads into the story of Purim. Okay? So that's why I wanted you to hold off and not reveal that. While I was going through my feeds this morning on social media, something popped up, and I went, that's interesting. I wonder who caught on to this. So for those of you that follow college basketball, you know what March is, right? It's March Madness. So the tournaments are starting. All the conferences are getting ready. I'm excited this year because UCF's doing pretty good. We'll kind of see if they get into the tournament and how things go. They're doing pretty good. Oh, stop it. I don't want to hear it. Deal with me. So the Big Ten, so if you're familiar with college basketball and college football, Big Ten would be like Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Michigan State, very well-known conference. This pops up on the feed. See if you get it. Purim. So these are the next 5 games that Michigan State has to play. Purdue, University of Indiana, Rutgers, and Michigan. I went through the comments to see if anybody picked that up. 0. And I went, look at that. Somebody knows what holiday's coming up. I thought that was fantastic. All right? So I'm going to go back through the comments again to see if anybody picked up on it, because I saw that everyone's talking about each of the games, and I'm going, but don't you see what's up there? It's Purim. But nobody gets it. That's okay, because God's given us eyes to see and ears to hear, and that's why we pick up on it. All right, so let's go to 1 Samuel. I'm going to leave that map up there for a minute for a reason, so hang tight with me. So 1 Samuel 15. And I'm going to start, we're actually going to read the full chapter because it's not that long. It's going to 32 verses, but there's some very important things here that need to be addressed. And I want you to remember something here because Steve brought this up a little bit earlier. God does not think in time. Right? He's outside of the time, what Pastor Ken used to say, the time-space continuum. There is no time in his mindset. But he has an enemy that he's sworn to defeat. And he gives this opportunity for King Saul to carry it out. And King Saul decides to go his own way. All right. We have to remember something. God could take care of all of this on his own. He could say a word and it's done. But he's giving us the opportunity to fight with him, to fight against the enemies that he has, and to stand in a place to work with him because he's willing to do that. He's willing to invite us in and say, I have an enemy that has caused me a lot of strife, and he's also put his hand against you all too, and I want that enemy to be destroyed, and I'm going to invite you to fight with me. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that the very master of the universe says, I've called a nation of people to do this, and I've called a priesthood to do this, and a responsibility is for us to proclaim those things. All right? But what happens is when the flesh steps in, it can cause some very unfortunate things, and we're going to see that tonight. So let's take a look. Let's read verses, actually, yes, let me start with verses 2 and verse 3. So this is the Lord speaking first. He says, Thus says the Lord, Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt. Verse 3, Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. That's tough. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But what is the issue with Amalek? What is it about Amalek's character that God says they need to be utterly destroyed? Okay? So it's in Exodus 17. If you want to go there, you can. This is Exodus 17, verses 14 through 16. All right, I'm not going to flip there. I have it in the notes here, but just if you want to go there, that's okay, or otherwise you can write it down. So, this is Exodus 17, verses 14 through 16. It says, The Lord said to Moses, Write this as a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses, now here's an interesting thing. I didn't realize this now, but just pay attention to this for a second too. And Moses built an altar and called it by name, saying, The Lord is my banner, which is Adonai Nisi, I believe, in Hebrew, right? Because the Lord has sworn, and we know from Scripture, where I'm going to read in a minute, when he speaks, his word does not come back to him void, right? So he's sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation unto generation. Okay. Second scripture that's related to that is Deuteronomy 25, verses 17 through 19. Okay, so the Lord is now again coming back to the nation of Israel. He's telling them, remember in verse 17, what the Amalekites did to you along the way when they came out of Egypt, when you were weary and worn out. Now this is depending on your translation, it's a little bit different. I kind of liked how this one spelled it out. When you were weary and when you were worn out, they met you. And not only that, where did they attack towards? The rear. So they were after the weak and the feeble. And the old and the sick and the infirm, yes, all right? When you were weary and worn out, they met you on their journey, and they attacked all who were lagging behind because they had no fear of God. This is what struck me, is that Amalek, that spirit, has no fear of God. It's I don't care who you are and what you do, I'm going to do this anyways, just to spite you. And that's what they did. That spirit that rose up within him was just, I'm going to come after you just because. And not only that, I'm going to go after the ones that are the weakest, the ones that can't defend themselves. That's cowardice. That's cowardice. In their minds, it might be, oh, I'm going to do this because I want to, and look how brave I am. That's just pure cowardice, is what they did. When the Lord gives you rest from all your enemies from around you in the land that he is giving you to possess as an inheritance, then you shall blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Don't forget. Don't forget is what he says. All right? So here in 1 Samuel 15, God is now telling Saul what he told Moses and the nation of Israel. Now is the time to do this. I'm giving you the opportunity to do this. Go and do it. And when you do it, I want you to do it this way. House rules. This is how you're going to do it. Okay? So let's continue. Let's go back to 1 Samuel 15. Actually, let me back up for a second. So we're looking at a point in time, more than likely, it seems that Israel is at rest, and this is a time for them to go into battle with Amalek. So God chose his time when it was specific. So I said before that it's tough to hear this judgment that he's passing, because he's not only telling it's the men that are going to be wiped out, it's everything. Men, women, and children, and also the animals. So everything that Amalek has in his possession is going to be wiped out. I think part of why God did this is because the animals that they were using also were somewhat tainted. Let me explain. Okay? This is just me thinking a bit here. Because God's very specific about the animals that he wants to use for his sacrifices, correct? Okay. I want you to watch what Saul does, and this is why I think God was very angry at the end. Okay? I can't imagine the level of evil the Amalekites practiced. Okay? There are accounts in history of how evil they were. Their rituals, how they killed their babies, all of the practices they did, the sexual practices that they did, everything that they did. We can't comprehend some of this stuff. When we watch the things that happen on TV and movies nowadays, when we see things that are uncomfortable, we get really queasy, right? Most of us, I think, if we watch something that's really uncomfortable, we typically turn it off, all right? One of the movies that caught my attention, it was a good movie. I'm a very big Liam Neeson fan. I think he's a great actor. I watched the movie Taken. How many of you have seen that movie? Okay. Well, the first one. The first one. That line he does in the movie is phenomenal. If you don't know the movie, I'm sure you heard the line. He goes, "I don't know who you are." When he's calling the bad guy, he says, "I will find you. And when I do, I will kill you." It's a great line, okay? But it revealed the world of sex trafficking. And it bothered me to the core to know that this is how women are treated. It also bothers me because I also know men are treated that way too. Because there are men who are sold into these kinds of slave trades, and they're treated as objects of things you don't want to possibly think. And I realize that how gross is this world? What are the things that we don't know are going on? I don't want to know that are going on. And the level that the Amalekites must have been, it had to have been at, from 0 to 100, at 10,000. For them to receive the punishment that God gave them. Now, I will also say this too. When Judgment Day comes and the resurrection happens and the books are open, I'm not talking about the books of the Lamb. That's where we are. But when the books are open for all those that have died, I don't know how Jesus is going to handle those individuals that were killed in this event. Okay? I don't know. He's the judge. However, ultimately, those individuals individually are going to be dealt with. He will deal with them. But this had to have been done at that time because there is an effect that was happening and bringing into the world, and this is no different than what God had to do for the flood. Evil got to a point where God said, "That's it. There's no way flesh can continue." All right? And the Amalekites must have gotten to that point, and that's the reality here, because what happened with the flood, not only was mankind wiped out, all the living creatures on the earth were wiped out too. So there's a bit of a reality check here, is how evil were they that it got to this level that God had to say, that's it. Not only the families, it's the animals, everything has to be wiped out. They have to be blotted out completely. It was serious. All right, so let's continue a little bit. So let's read verses 4 through 9. So Saul gathers the people together and numbers them in Telam, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. That's a lot. That's a huge army. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay in the wait in the valley. And Saul said to the Kenites, "Go, depart, get down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all of the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt." So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. And Saul attacked the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is east of Egypt. He also took Agag, underline that, king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, and the fatlings, and the lambs, and all that was good. Somebody did something they weren't supposed to do. Now, let's talk about the Kenites, for example. Who are the Kenites? Anybody know? It's interesting. If you go to Judges 1 verse 16, it says, "Now the children of Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up from the city of palms with the children of Israel into the wilderness of Judah." It was another name for Jethro. So it's possible that the Kenites were a subset of the Midianites, that they lived and were there with him, but Joshua, specifically in the book of Joshua, calls him a Kenite. So this is a relationship here that Saul remembers and says, "I remember what you did. You were kind to my brothers and my sisters. We're going to come in here and wipe everybody else out. You guys have time to get out of here." Now, I also consider what that spiritually means for the nations today. Which ones are in a position to show favor to his children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and which ones aren't? And what happens when that day comes, when the nations have to deal with the reality of, this is what happens when you come against my kids. So here is a beautiful picture of what that's like. Whose side do we want to be on when the time comes when things have to fall into place the way God wants them to? All right, let's continue a little bit. That path of where Saul probably chased after them could be anywhere from here down to here. So 200,000 men possibly chased them anywhere in this area. And the reason for that is, one of the areas that's mentioned in the book of Genesis, where it's the river Pishon, it says it flows into the valley of Havilah. Havilah is not marked here. However, if you do a little bit of studying, and you are a believer that the continents were all attached prior to the flood, what was Havilah filled with? Gold. This area right here, there's a lot of gold. And there's a lot of gold that's there. All right? So it's possible that this is the area where they were chasing after them, anywhere from here to here. It also makes sense because where were the Midianites located? They were located here, right? So for most of us, at least in this congregation, tend to believe that the Israelites crossed somewhere right in this area here. And there's evidence because there's chariot wheels in that area that's littered on the ground. Okay? So we know that the boundaries of that territory for the Havilah would have been from here to here. So anywhere on the eastern side of Egypt all the way down to here is possibly where they were. That's where they were being chased. So this was quite a bit of a route depending on where they were located. Okay, just to give you a reference point. So he takes Agag, and also that he takes the best of the sheep and the oxen and the fat calves and the lambs and all that was good. Now, who thought they were good? Saul and the people did that were with him. They all did, right? Because they all spared it. What animals are used for sacrifices? Lambs? Goats? What else? Bulls. they're holding on to these animals, and most of them are used for sacrifices. What was nation of Israel's responsibility regarding the lambs? You go and find them, right? These were ones that are like, we won the jackpot. We've got an extra supply, right? And God said, that's unholy. You were supposed to wipe that out. So they assume that these are fine. These are clean animals. We can just keep them and we'll just utilize them for us. And God said, what are you doing? That's not what I told you to do. All right? So they took within their own power, said, we'll keep what we want to keep, but then we'll destroy what we want to destroy. So I think that's a pretty rebellious spirit there that he's demonstrating right in front of all the people. And he's the king. All right? So let's continue a little bit. It says, now this is interesting. This is where it's not, I shouldn't say it's unfortunate. Saul knew better. But this is the reality of what you do and the consequences of when you do something that could pass on for generations afterwards. I'll explain why. So now the word of the Lord came to Samuel saying, I greatly regret that I have set up Saul as king. That's tough. Greatly regret that I have set up Saul as king, for he has turned his back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night. So when Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, it was told to Samuel, saying, Saul went to Carmel, and indeed he set up a mountain for himself, and he has gone around and passed by and gone down to Gilgal. Let me read that again, because it's not mountain. Right? So Saul went to Carmel and indeed set up a monument for himself. And he has gone around, passed by, and has gone down to Gilgal. What did Saul just do? He raised himself up with an image or a memorial of what he just did. What did Moses do when God said, I'm going to wipe out the Amalekites? He set up an altar and he called on the name of the Lord. Now, whether Saul realized he did this or not, he just put himself in the place of God. He wanted to honor himself. Moses chose to honor God. Samuel said, I'm going to honor myself because I did this. Saul, sorry, yes, thank you. Saul said that. So verse 12, so when Samuel rose up early in the morning to meet Saul, I already read that part, right? So verse 13. Then Samuel went down to Saul and said, Saul, blessed are you, sorry, let me read that again. That's my glasses. I have to get a better prescription. Sorry, guys, hang on. Then Samuel went to Saul, and Saul said to him, blessed are you of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. Can you imagine the guts of this guy? Samuel's a prophet, and Saul's telling him, hey, how you doing, buddy? I did everything the Lord asked me to do. Isn't it great? You like my statue? But Samuel said, what then is this bleating of the sheep at my ears and the lowing of the oxen that I hear? And Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice. That's why I mentioned it. Here we go. He actually says it. They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have destroyed. I'm in shock reading this again, because this is a guy that believes his own lies. This is how bad this is. This is how bad this is. I got the sheep for you, Lord. I mean, I didn't. It's like Jesus says when he warns them and says, separate from me. We fed you. We took care of you. We did all of these things. And what does Jesus say? Depart from me, for I don't know you. It's the same thing here. Why? Because they're coming from a point of view saying, I know what you want. I'm going to do it this way. And the Lord said, that's not what I asked you to do. And yet they're going to take these animals that were not supposed to be sacrificed. They're going to go, well, we got extras. And they're in great shape. They're going to be great for Passover. Verse 16, Samuel says to Saul, shut up. Be quiet. I can imagine if it were some of us, we probably would have had some extra four-letter words probably coming out of him at that point. It's like, what are you thinking? How did you get here? What are you doing? Are you serious? You have defied the Lord your God. He has specifically given you an instruction. This is the very enemy that he said that came after your descendants, went after the weak in your family, and tried to destroy them. And God said, I want this enemy destroyed, and you're letting this guy live? What are you doing? He's like, why? We look good. The sheep look great. And I will tell you what the Lord said to me last night. And Saul responds, go ahead, tell me. This is like a brat, like a teenage brat, right? It's like, oh, what did the Lord tell me? Go ahead and tell me. Tell me what he said. When you were little in your own eyes, were you not the head of the tribes of Israel? And did not the Lord anoint you as king over Israel? Now the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they were consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you swoop down on the spoil and do an evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said to Samuel, but I have obeyed. Again, I can't believe he's saying this. But I've obeyed the Lord and gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. And I've brought back Agag, the king of the Amalekites. I have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. He doesn't have mathematics really well, does he? What does all mean? All. Right? How many are left? One too many. One too many. You know why I say that? Who is the antagonizer in the story of Hadassah? Haman. What is his title? Haman the Agagite. Now, do we know for sure that he is the progenitor? Not 100% sure. I think he is. My personal thing is I think he is. Somehow, and there's different teachings on how that happened, but the reality is he's identified Haman the Agagite. And if it's true, you put your people 500 years later in the crosshairs when they should not have been put in the crosshairs. That's the reality. When God gives us an assignment, we may not understand or know what it is, but if we don't follow through, the consequences could be something that could be generations down the road. And this is why God was very angry with Saul, and he had every right to be. He says in verse 21, but the people took the plunder, the sheep, and so now he blames the people, right? This is like Aaron when he throws in the rings and the gold of the people into the fire to make the calf. Aaron says, yeah, I threw all this stuff in there, but how pop this calf? I have no idea how it happened. It's like, yeah, you did. You molded and shaped it in there. You threw everything in there. It doesn't magically happen, right? But the people took the plunder and the oxen, the best things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. So Samuel said, Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord. So what's God's most important thing for us to do? Obey him. It's not about, hey, I've got the best sheep here in the land and I want to make sure God gets it. No. What God really wanted was, yes, Lord, I'm going to do it and I'm going to follow suit. And even if it means having to destroy the animals that you created, I'm going to follow through with it. Even if it means I have to go and do the things you've asked me to do, I'm going to go and do it. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. And Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. Now he realizes. Why? Because now he's lost his power. It's like, no, don't take this away from me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Notice the contrast between David and Saul. As soon as Nathan approached him and told the story, of course, He's hot and angry about like whoever this character is you're talking about in the story. He needs to have this happen to him. And Nathan turns around and says, well, you know, it's you. And David immediately breaks and says, I'm sorry. It's me that did this. I have and that's the beautiful thing that David exhibits, is that although he's a sinner, he's quick to recognize when he's wrong and he accepts the punishment. Saul, on the other hand, has clue after clue, opportunity after opportunity to say, I'm sorry, no, I did it wrong. I didn't hear really well. And as soon as he loses his seat of authority is when he says, sorry, God, can I have my place back? Nope. Saul says to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord. Just 2 seconds ago, you said what God wanted you to do. Now all of a sudden you've transgressed. What happened? I feared the people and obeyed their voice, shifting blame. Now therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me, for I may worship the Lord. And Samuel says to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. And Samuel turned around to go away, and Saul seized him by the edge of the robe. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. This is literally like sad. He's begging him, don't go. I can't, don't leave without me. I'm going to lose my power. And he rips the robe, and Samuel turns around and says, the Lord has torn this kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor of yours who is better than you. And also the strength of Israel. Now I love this. What does your translation say in verse 29? I have, and the strength of Israel. God steps in here and says to him, the strength of Israel. And the Hebrew word for that is, let me get the Hebrew word, hold on. Because I want to, there's a word for that in Hebrew. Let me get it. Give me 1 second. Sorry, see, I have all these notes and I go off. See, I don't even know why I have my notes. All right. Oh, Netzika Israel, the eternal one of Israel. Okay? So he says, and the strength of Israel will not lie, nor will he relent, for he is not a man that he should relent. So this is God stepping in and saying, you didn't do your job, I'm stepping in. I gave you the opportunity. I'm not a liar, you are. I don't ever want to be called a liar by God. This is a big deal. Because it's easy, like, oh, I'm just lying to Samuel. I'm just telling him all of these things just to placate to him. But the Lord steps into him and says, I'm not a liar. You hear me? I have a plan. You're messing it up. You're the liar. That's heavy. And he turns around, Samuel turns around, and he says to Agag, bring Agag, the king of the Amalekites, here to me. So Agag came to him cautiously. I bet he did. And Agag said to him, surely the bitterness of death has passed. You know what he's saying? Hey, let's make a deal here. You're calm, right? You're good. Your anger's like a little lower here. Can we kind of talk this out a bit? And Samuel says, as your sword has made women and children childless, so your mother shall be childless among women. And Samuel then cut Agag to pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. He was serious. This is as serious as when Pinchas did what he did when that altercation happened in front of the tent of meeting. God doesn't play. When he means business, he means business. And this is the fear that I have, that I don't feel like I'm scared. It's like I remember when I come in and who I'm talking to. He's the possessor of heaven and earth. And he's got a way that he's dealing with things, and he wants things done right because he doesn't want perpetual effects happening generation after generation if it can be get nipped in the butt now. If this is an opportunity for things to get taken care of and we're done and we can move on, that's what I want. I want to continue with my plan of redemption. Not have to come back and clean up the mess again and again and again and again. That's the lesson we need to learn, is that if we're given an opportunity to do something, let's do it. Let's do it with joy, because that's the peace that we have and the joy that we have, that we partner with him. And the peace that we have, as we know, is we fulfilled his will, and there's fruit that's bared from it. Not death. Not continuing to pass the buck to the next generation to go and do things when he's asked you to do it now. Because if that happens, he'll say, okay, fine, if you're not going to do it, then I'll let somebody else do it. But now you're going to have to suffer the consequences continually until I decide to step back in and do it and fix it. All right? And Samuel went no more to see Saul until the day of his death. Nonetheless, Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord regretted that he made Saul king over Israel. That's tough. But the picture here is what I want you to remember is on this end, before we get back to the Torah portion, is the seriousness of the charge that's been given to us, but also the joy of the charge that's been given to us for what he's doing. We have thousands of years to look back and say, I can see all the things that he's doing, and yes, it makes more sense, but we don't know yet the things that are laying before us yet either. What the kingdom is going to be truly like, what it's going to be like to live with him in an eternity, what that looks like as far as like, well, how does this work? What are we going to be doing? We don't know, but we know what we've been in charge to do now, and let's continue to do that, right? So how does that tie into the portion for tonight? Let me explain. Let's go back and look at Exodus here. We'll spend about another 15 minutes here on the Torah portion, and then we'll call it an evening. But I wanted to definitely tie this in because this is the hope that we have. The picture was started back here in Exodus, and there's some really neat things that God gives charge to Moses when he's explaining these things and how it pictures the future too as well. Okay, so we're going to cover the menorah and the altar of incense. So we're going to read Exodus 27, and I want to read verses 20 through 21 first. Yes, all right, so this is where the portion starts. This is verse 20 in Exodus 27. It says, "And you shall command the children of Israel that they shall bring you pure oil of pressed olives for the light, to cause the lamp to burn continually." How long is it supposed to burn? All the time. When it's on, it's on. In other words, when that tabernacle is up and everything's in place, it's to remain on, right? Continually. In the tabernacle of meeting outside the veil were therefore the testimony. Aaron and his sons shall tend to it from evening until morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever, and the generations on the behalf of Israel. So while they're serving, that light needs to be on all the time. They would tend to it in the morning, and they would tend to it in the evening. Those of you that have priests that serve when we do the tabernacle tours kind of have an idea what that's like. You guys are constantly checking, making sure the oil is filled and the lamps are lit. Now, do we know the size of the actual menorah? No, we don't. The dimensions are not given, so there's a wide variety of sizes and things that are described, but we know what it looked like, but we don't know the size. So it could have been taller than this, could have been a little lower than this, but this is an example of the priest going in and lighting the menorah. And can you imagine, and there's a little bit of a depiction here, the gold plates of the boards that were around, how much that room lit up, and how warm it must have been, that feeling of just peace when you walked in, and the quiet that would have been in there when you walked in. It's impressive. Okay, so one thing came to mind, I thought about this, was when I was growing up, I had an opportunity. We've done this several times. The first time I had the opportunity to do this, we went to Arlington National Cemetery, and we got to see John Kennedy's grave. How many of you have seen John Kennedy's grave? What's there? The eternal flame, right? So there's this picture of that light that's continually burning all the time because the soldiers have to maintain that lamp day and night. So it's not the same as the menorah, but there's this fascination I had as a kid. I'm like, that sounds familiar. You know, this idea of like keeping a lamp lit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, rain, snow, sleet, or hail, it's always lit. So that lamp, if you can't see it, it's right here. It's right at the head of his where he's buried. It's right there. So that's Appomattox Courthouse, I believe, on the top in Arlington. So it's right down the hill. It's right there. And, you know, just thinking about that, you know, the work that goes into that, but how special it is to have that role as a priest to be able to light the menorah, you know, is pretty special. You know, I think even a gazillion times better to do that than to take care of John Kennedy's tomb, you know, because this is service here, right? And the reality of what that picture is here in a minute, you're going to see. All right, the other thing we're going to talk about is the altar of incense. So let's go on to that a second here. And that's going to be in Exodus 30, verses 1 through 10. So let's go there. All right, so in Exodus 30, verses 1 through 10, it says, "You shall make an altar to burn incense on it, and you shall make it of acacia wood. A cubit shall be its length, a cubit shall be its width. It shall be square, and the 2 cubits shall be its height. The horn shall be one piece with it. And you shall overlap its top with sides that are on the sides all around, and the horns with pure gold. And you shall make it for a molding of gold around it. 2 gold rings you shall make for it. Under the molding on the both sides, you shall place them on the 2 sides, and they shall be the holders for where the poles with which you are to bear it." So just as an aside, 2 of the 3 things were carried by poles in the holy place. What were the 2 things that, or actually 3 things, I should say. No, 2 things, sorry. Altar of incense, a table of showbread, okay? The menorah had to be wrapped specifically, and it was carried out as well. Right, but it didn't have poles. Just so you know, the ark also has poles too. The menorah didn't. Why that is, I don't know. There might be significance to that. Lord hasn't, at least for me, hasn't revealed that yet. But it's interesting. All the other pieces are carried with poles, but the menorah is the only thing that doesn't have poles. That has to be carried out. All right, verse 7. Let me just jump down a little bit. Let me back up to verse 6. "So you shall put it before the veil that is before the ark of the testimony, before the mercy seat, that is over the testimony where I will meet you." So it's positioned in the tabernacle in the wilderness right here, and there's the veil, and behind that would be the ark where the mercy seat rests. So the closest thing to the ark, besides the veil, is the altar of incense. And that's interesting. Okay? "Aaron shall burn it on sweet incense every morning when he tends to the lamps. He shall burn incense on it, and when Aaron lights the lamps at twilight, he shall burn incense on it as well." So again, we talked about there's 2 times during the day that this is happening, in the morning and in the evening. What's also happening in the morning and the evening? The offerings are happening. So this is a beautiful picture of what God's constantly having us focus on, pointing us to that service is that Jesus himself is pointing the way for this worship. Because that lamb that's being sacrificed points to him, both in the morning and the evening. We have the lamps that are lit, or the menorah that's lit in the morning and the evening. And the prayers and the incense is lit every morning and every evening. And it has a very specific scent on it as well. Now, you're going to hear about this in the next Torah portion possibly, but God was very particular about the perfumers who were to make these scents. He told them, do not make this for yourselves. So there's a unique smell or flavor that's in this room that you can't smell anywhere else. And I think that's kind of cool because if you just think of it from a sensory standpoint, God had a unique smell and you knew where his presence was. Right? Now, I don't know personally if this is true or not. This is a thing of faith, but I have heard people who have come into this congregation, and I've heard other people who go to different congregations where the Holy Spirit truly is alive in a congregation and Jesus is Lord, and they say to a person, there is a smell in the room that's unique, and it smells like those things that were burned in the tabernacle. All right, now, that could be just perception or things. I've never smelt it myself, and maybe it's just I didn't perceive it. But I think there's just, if that's true, that's kind of a really beautiful thing if the Lord's allowed that to happen, right? That he's allowed that smell, that his presence is so full, but the reality is we are his body. So that's the most important thing. All right. So all those things happen each day. Let's go to Revelation chapter 5. And we're going to read that and Revelation 8, and we're going to see how important these pieces are and why worship is so essential for a congregation. Because it's not just the singing and the worship and the honor and the praises that we're giving him. There's a purpose behind them. And hopefully you'll see the same thing that I did when I read this. All right, we're going to read I won't, maybe not read all of 5, but let me start in verse 1 just to give it some context. And it says, this is Revelation chapter 5, verse 1. It says, I saw on the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and to loosen its seals? And there was no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth who was able to open the scroll or look into it. So I wept much because there was no one who was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the elders said to me, do not weep, for behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loosen its 7 seals. I'm going to stop there for a second. I know we talk about, and it's extremely important, the reality of Jesus' death on the cross. And that we have to, from time to time, come to that place where we're at the foot of that cross. Because that's the victory he's paid for us, to be able to live and serve the Holy One. But I also want you to consider how important it was for heaven for him to do that, because he was the only one who can open these scrolls. And this is what he's saying here. Behold, there is no one in heaven, there is no one under the earth, there is no one on the earth, but behold, there is one, the Lion from the tribe of Judah. Forever and ever, he will be worshipped and praised for that. Because the accomplishment was for this creation. We have salvation. But the Father's plan of redemption moved forward because heaven rejoiced too. Because there was no one in heaven who can open those scrolls either. How precious is that? And I looked, behold, in the middle of the throne of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb, though it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into the earth. And he came and took with the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And now when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Underline this, please. I'm going to read it again. Now when he had taken the scroll from the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and a golden bowl full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. Fellowship Church, your prayers are in those bowls that the 24 elders are holding in their hands. And they are worshiping the Holy One and the Lamb day and night. That is worth everything we can offer the Lord when we worship. It's not that we're just praying and we're not interceding. It's not that all of these pictures that we see. The reality is there is a purpose to those things, because the altar that is in heaven, there is worship happening day and night. There are bowls that these 24 elders are holding, and they're proclaiming this day and night, and those bowls are filled with the prayers of the saints. They're presented before the Father every day. And they sang with a new song, saying, you are worthy to open the scroll and to open the seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by your blood. And out of every tribe and every tongue and every people and every nation, he has made us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign with him on the earth. That's wonderful. What a hope we have. And that hope is placed within us because we have been in a position to lay ourselves down and say, I'm not going to go my way. I want to go your way. And I want to be a part of that kingdom. And I want to serve and be a part of that kingdom. And I don't want to do things the way that I think they need to be done. I want to be under your feet and be at your feet is what I really should say. Not at your feet, but at your feet. All right, so one more thing I want to close with. Let's go to Revelation. I think it's 8 is what I want. Yes, 8, 1 through 4. It's like, if that wasn't enough, we got one more for you. If that's not cool enough. All right. So this is the 7th seal. All right. It says, when he opened the 7th seal, there was a silence in heaven for about a half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he would offer it up with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Let that sink in for a second. And the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth, and there were noises and thunderings and lightnings and earthquakes. What do you think those prayers are saying to God? Everything that we pray for here, that we petition the Lord for, the plan of redemption to go through, that the nation of Israel would go into the position that they were called to be, that the church would come alive and serve according to the way that we're supposed to serve, so that Jesus can stand and come back and establish the kingdom. So just as Steve said earlier, so that the law can go forth from Zion and the nations can worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. This is the picture that we have. This is the worship that we have. This is a wonderful thing. And I know from time to time it can get mundane. I know that. It happens with me sometimes. Sometimes there's days I walk in and I'm like, okay, the songs are pretty good. We worshiped okay. Other days worship is raucous in here. I mean, you can feel a difference. Okay. Just keep in mind the pictures that we see in Revelation 5 and Revelation 8. Where we are, where those prayers are being held by, how close they are to the throne, and the Lord hears us. Let's continue to walk in his will and his purpose, because that's coming here, and we're going to see him face to face. And it's no longer going to be this thing where we have to just imagine it. We're going to do it, and it's going to be glorious. Shabbat shalom.